And I actually moved to New York City about this time. I was traveling around and I came to New York, and there were all these different varied types of people, and I said, if I'm gonna try to make a living photographing people, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but this would probably be the place because there are 1.5 million people packed on a tiny island from all different cultures, all different backgrounds. And so I had the idea that I was gonna move to New York City and I was gonna try to photograph 10,000 people on the streets. And then this was the one that really changed things. This is the one, and I'm gonna emphasize this later in my closing remarks, but when I speak at colleges, one thing I always emphasize about Humans of New York is that the work did not follow the idea. The idea followed the work. The commitment wasn't gonna move to New York, create a huge popular photo blog that millions of people are gonna follow that's gonna turn into a best-selling book. It was that I want to photograph all day long, and I'm gonna do it. And I photographed every day for several hours. And through doing that, through tiny evolutions centered on the work, I discovered the idea that eventually became so big. And this was a huge moment when I met this woman. I've been photographing for months, taken thousands of portraits already, just photos. Humans of New York isn't really even known for photography today. It's a storytelling blog. But I was in New York going at it against the advice of everyone I knew full time, thinking I was gonna create a photography blog. And then I ran into this woman, and I didn't even really like the picture I took of her, but she said something to me. She said, I used to be a different color every day. Then one day I was green, and that was a good day. So I've been green for 15 years. And yeah, I thought that was kind of cute. And I went home, and I didn't even post her picture for a couple days, because remember, I thought I was a photographer. It was a photography blog. And then one day I got sick, and I couldn't go out and photograph. I posted her picture, and I put that little quote she said over it. And suddenly, it was the most engaging photo I'd ever had. The comments, the likes, it was the most popular picture I've ever had. And once again, I discovered something that I could do differently. I didn't have a journalism degree from Columbia. I still wasn't that good at photography, but you know what? I'd approached thousands of people on the streets of New York just out of love. And I was getting to be just about the best person in the world at stopping a random stranger on the street and asking for their photograph. And so I said, why not take that to the next level? Now that I've already stopped these people, why don't I find out who they are and learn about their stories? And ever since that moment, the evolution of Humans of New York has been towards telling deeper and deeper stories about people on the street. I always kind of start with these broad questions, and then through follow-up questions, I'm always looking for kind of an intimate story about this person's life that I haven't heard from the other 10,000 people that I photographed. And doesn't that kind of follow the same trajectory of this whole journey? Of once I discovered something that with my training I can do differently, honing in on that and doing nothing else but that. And the more I'm able to identify that and through my interview process bring that out, the faster the blog grows and the more it succeeds. There's so many people out there that are planning, that are kind of sketching their dreams in notebooks, and it's such a safe place to be because when you're planning, you can't fail. Instead of writing the first page of that great novel, you're writing 400 pages of plot outlines and character sketches because it's so scary to start. And I always say that if I had waited until I had the idea of Humans of New York and before I was ready to be a photographer, before I decided to be a photographer, I wouldn't be here today. So anything great that you want to do, anything huge, you have to start before you're ready, and you have to trust that you're going to become who you need to be on the way, because that's what will happen. I didn't have this idea and then go out and execute it. I focused on the one thing that I could control in this crazy world. The one thing I could control, I couldn't control if Humans of New York was giant. I couldn't control if I was a great photographer or if I spoke to millions of people. I could control that I went out and I worked every single day. I treated it like a job. I went out and photographed every single day. And by just focusing on the work, this beautiful thing emerged out of the tiny discoveries I made along the way. Thank you guys so much.